We live in an ever-changing world thanks to the constant improvements in the field of technology. Our modes of transport and sources of energy have evolved massively over time. For example, we now have electricity or diesel powertrains compared to the steam engines of days past. While this might seem like a relic, many of the technologies of the 19th century were absolutely world-changing for the people of its time. And the developments made in this era would set the ball rolling for future technologies of the 20th and 21st centuries. The Industrial Revolution was a specific period in world history starting in the middle of the 18th century. During this period, much of Europe and North America transformed from economies relying heavily on agriculture to economies dependent on manufacturing industries. Starting in Britain, the Industrial Revolution resulted in a transformation in manufacturing methods. Workers moved from small, home-based cottage industries to large, efficient factories. This happened with textile production and metal production. The importance of the different factors that led to the Industrial Revolution have long been debated, but I'll be looking at three key factors I think have played a larger role in causing the Industrial Revolution. One of the first causes of the Industrial Revolution was the presence of a stable political system in Britain. Despite still being involved in a number of wars, Britain was experiencing a period of relative stability at home. As rule of law became stronger, the abolition of feudalism meant that property rights also got stronger. Parliament played a role in adapting property rights to the new conditions, enabling workers to take advantage of economic opportunities. In a way, this can be understood as the early days of capitalism. Those who had access to capital were able to set up industries, pay workers, produce and sell goods to people. Strong rule of law also meant that there were well-regulated, established markets for Britain to sell its goods into, and strong financial institutions offered business loans that helped propel growth. The second factor that led to the Industrial Revolution was Britain's access to natural resources. Away from home, British colonies in North America provided land and slave labour. At home, Britain had large and accessible supplies of coal and iron, two absolutely vital raw materials needed to produce the goods that would come out of the Industrial Revolution. Coal was used as a fuel for steam engines, and iron to make tools, machines and buildings. Another natural resource was Britain's geography. Its isolated location had kept it relatively safe from wars on mainland Europe. As an island, it had benefited from many of its harbours along its long coastline. The third factor leading to the Industrial Revolution was the preceding Agricultural Revolution, which had taken place as a result of improved farming techniques. This meant that Britain was producing more crops and larger, healthier livestock for its growing population. In a self-reinforcing cycle, the population growth demanded more resources and more efficient manufacturing processes. Now that we have explored the factors that led to the Industrial Revolution, we can now consider what the revolution actually looked like. Generally speaking, the events that took place during the Industrial Revolution fall into two stages: the first Industrial Revolution and the second Industrial Revolution. The first Industrial Revolution began in about the mid-18th century. Much of the developments that took place during this period was in textile manufacturing and steam power. During the first Industrial Revolution, Britain had originally imposed trade tariffs on textiles coming from its competitors in India and China. This way, it was able to protect its infant industries. This, in combination with low cotton prices from slave plantations in the Americas, allowed Britain to amass a lot of wealth. When compared to its continental European neighbours, Britain had an advantage in knowledge and technical know-how, thanks to its apprentice system, which allowed for the training of highly skilled technicians, your mechanics, engineers, machine workers, and many others. As the revolution started, Britain, very much aware of the opportunities that lay ahead, made deliberate attempts to hinder the spread of the technologies being developed on British soil, going as far as forbidding the emigration of its technicians. However, eventually, you did see the migration of thousands of workers to places like France, Belgium, and German states. One of the most important inventions was the steam engine. Created by Thomas Newcomen in 1712, it was first used to drive a pump that would remove water from mines. As the engines evolved, it was later used in transportation, for example, in steam locomotives and also in steam-powered ships, which would speed up voyages around the world. Textile production capabilities increased with the invention of the spinning jenny, a machine for spinning cotton. Invented by James Hargreaves, the spinning jenny had 8 spindles attached to a single spinning wheel, allowing its user to spin multiple threads at the same time. This technology was later improved by Richard Arkwright, whose invention of the spinning frame allowed for the production of strong yarn and a much greater amount of cotton to be spun. Over in the United States, the invention of the cotton gin revolutionized its industry and allowed the slave-based economies of the South to gain more political power. As the revolution took shape, technological advancements meant that spun cotton became less expensive, and with less need for manual labor, growing discontent amongst the populations led to uprisings. The most notable of these were the Luddites, who were textile workers who felt they were losing their jobs to the new machines, and so began vandalizing machines in the north of England. Growing industrialization was changing the lives of workers in Britain. Many who previously worked in small farms or home-based vocations were now living in filthy cities working long hours under dangerous conditions. This paved the way for trade unions, allowing for better communication between workers and employers, and also for better working conditions. In 1846 Britain, the Corn Laws were repealed. This law deterred people from buying foreign food by placing high tariffs on them. This benefited the common people who no longer were forced to buy grain at high prices. The Second Industrial Revolution began in the mid-19th century, continuing until the early 20th century, at about the start of the First World War. Building on the advancements of the First Industrial Revolution, the Second Industrial Revolution saw the growth of industries including steel production and chemicals, supported by the proliferation of electricity. It also saw a growth in the use of cars, made possible by improved infrastructure. Bridges, railroads, ships, skyscrapers all benefited from the availability of cheaper steel. Key to the Second Industrial Revolution was the permeation of these technologies into everyday life, from the use of cars to the use of electricity to power modern home appliances and communication equipment to connect people. Inventors such as Alexander Bell, who invented the telephone, and Thomas Edison, who designed the light bulb, helped change the daily lives of its population. The increase in car use can be attributed to the design of the internal combustion engine. This is probably the greatest improvement in transportation technology since the steam engine. American industrialist Henry Ford developed the assembly line, allowing for a quicker, less expensive automobile production service. In Britain, the continued rise of factories meant that even more people flooded to urban areas from rural areas, often in search of employment. This allowed for rapid urbanization that allowed cities to become hubs of economic activity. As the common people gained more economic stability, social dynamics shifted from a land-based one to a new dynamic based more on their wealth. This allowed for better social mobility. The Industrial Revolution sparked change around the world. Increased productivity allowed for drastic changes in society. Given subsequent iterations of the Industrial Revolution, we're currently in the fourth, it's perhaps more helpful to look at the Industrial Revolution as a gradual change in society marked by dynamic technological developments. Cars, phones, roads, computers, and many other things that we use daily were made possible due to the rapid growth of their industries. And as technologies evolve, it's important to be aware of the socio-economic impacts of each technology, be it on children, minority groups, or the impacts on education and working conditions and the environment.